Well, I'm not really surprised at this at all because, let's be honest, Meghan was a D-list actress before she met Prince Harry. And well, their massive break into Hollywood with people such as Kate.
Hollywood runs on status, timing, and flawless appearances. When you're in, you're in. But when you're out, no amount of designer gowns or practiced smiles can save you. Meghan Markle thought she could rewrite that rule at the HBO Max Emmy nominee celebration, one of the hottest tickets in town. She believed this was her chance to remind Hollywood that she still belonged among its brightest stars. But instead of applause, what she got was humiliation on a scale few could imagine. Booed by the very people she once wanted to impress, ignored by the stars who had once welcomed her, and erased from the event's official coverage, Meghan's attempt at a power move turned into a very public downfall. Tonight, we're diving into how Meghan went from duchess to unwanted guest, and why Hollywood's reaction wasn't just rejection. It was a brutal message she couldn't ignore.
So that's a very, very big cross out amongst the grade A people where she lives. They've decided that she's...
Before Meghan Markle even set foot in that ballroom, her reputation was already shaky. Once billed as a rising Hollywood actress, she had only ever managed D-list recognition with her role on Suits. Marrying Prince Harry transformed her status overnight, giving her global recognition and a title that made her feel untouchable. But the years following her royal exit haven't been the Hollywood dream she imagined. Failed business ventures, a Spotify deal that crashed and burned, a podcast that never lived up to expectations, and a lifestyle brand mocked for being confusing and overpriced. Each misstep chipped away at her credibility. Even her ties to influential friends like Oprah and Gayle King had cooled. Insiders whispered that Meghan wasn't just struggling professionally, she was losing her social footing too. By the time she walked into that Emmy celebration, Hollywood's patience was already wearing thin.
Netflix, everything is not working out because they haven't given it concentration, they're not skilled, but they think they know how to do everything. And people...
The HBO Max Emmy nominee celebration wasn't just another party. It was the gathering of the season, packed with A-list stars, celebrated directors, and producers who defined Hollywood's current power structure. Invitations were coveted, access tightly controlled. Meghan Markle, however, didn't have one. According to insiders, her team knew exactly where the event was and when the cameras would be flashing. They orchestrated her entrance as a calculated move to grab headlines. The plan was simple. Show up, smile, and let the paparazzi do the rest. But what Meghan underestimated was that Hollywood operates on more than optics. It operates on earned credibility. She had no nomination, no current project worth celebrating, and no legitimate reason to be there. To many, her presence felt like an intrusion, a desperate attempt to claw her way back into relevance without having put in the work.
Royal family to try and break into Hollywood again and to try and put...
The moment Meghan walked into the ballroom, the atmosphere shifted. At first, it was subtle. A few whispers, a couple of raised eyebrows, but it spread quickly. One attendee reportedly muttered, "Oh no, not her," loud enough for others to hear. That single remark cracked open the room's tension, and soon hushed conversations buzzed across the event. Instead of admiration or polite acknowledgement, Meghan was met with awkward glances and visible discomfort. Stars who were mid-conversation paused, glanced in her direction, and shifted uneasily. It wasn't just that people noticed her, they noticed her for the wrong reasons. In Hollywood, where image is everything, body language speaks louder than words, and the collective groans and murmurs made one thing clear. Meghan wasn't welcome. She hadn't reclaimed her status, she had disrupted a carefully curated night of celebration, and everyone knew it.
That's it, basically. So she's had it. And it must absolutely upset her to the ceiling. Very hurtful.
If the murmurs stung, the boos shattered any illusion Meghan had left. Witnesses say that as she moved further into the room, someone near the central table started booing loudly. Within seconds, the sound spread, picked up by others who were equally unimpressed by her presence. For Meghan, who once thrived on royal fanfare and red carpet applause, the sound must have been devastating. The Hollywood she imagined herself commanding had turned its back on her, and they weren't subtle about it. This wasn't polite rejection, it was public humiliation. The boos echoed louder than any headline she could have spun later. In that single moment, Meghan's carefully constructed image of control cracked. Her attempt to remind people she was still relevant had instead reminded them why they no longer wanted her around. For an actress used to applause, the sound of boos was her worst nightmare.
Friends are dropping her once upon a time friends, who she used very usefully professionally, that don't want anything.
As if the boos weren't enough, Hollywood's biggest names made sure Meghan felt the cold shoulder. Zendaya, one of the night's most celebrated young stars, reportedly turned her back the moment she noticed Meghan approaching. She pulled her assistant into a deep conversation, making it clear Meghan wasn't welcome. Pedro Pascal, a fan favorite and Emmy darling, excused himself mid-laugh from a group of colleagues and disappeared to the bar the second Meghan edged closer. Even stylists, journalists, and minor celebrities, usually eager for a photo or soundbite, avoided her like the plague. They angled their bodies away, avoided eye contact, and shifted their conversations to keep her at a distance. It wasn't accidental. Insiders later confirmed it was deliberate. Nobody wanted to be photographed with Meghan. In Hollywood, association is currency, and her stock had dropped so low that even a casual photo op was seen as a liability.
Hollywood has, in a nice way, it hasn't gone as planned. She's had friends deserting her left, right, and centre. She's fallen out.
Behind the polite smiles and champagne glasses, Hollywood was playing a strategic game. According to insiders, the room had already decided Meghan wasn't someone they wanted to be associated with. Publicists whispered to their clients to avoid her, photographers deliberately looked past her, and producers made sure she wasn't seated anywhere near the nominees. The message was clear. Meghan wasn't part of this circle anymore. For someone who had built her post-royal career on image management, Netflix documentaries, glossy interviews, and staged paparazzi shots, this was devastating. She had no control in that room, no script to fall back on, no editing bay to polish her image. Hollywood was rejecting her in real time, and worse, they were doing it with unity. It wasn't just one or two snubs, it was the entire industry turning its back, and Meghan was powerless to stop it.
Many parties, but Harry and Meghan are no longer really considered part of the British royal family now.
While Hollywood stars avoided her, event organizers were thrown into panic mode. Security staff huddled at the entrance, checking guest lists on their tablets and whispering frantically into headsets. Meghan's name wasn't there. The question quickly became, do they risk removing her in front of everyone, creating a viral scandal, or do they let her stay and quietly manage the fallout? After heated back-and-forth discussions, they chose the latter. Rather than dragging her out, they minimized her presence. Meghan was quietly escorted to a seat near the exit corridor, far from the central stage and away from the cameras. She wasn't given champagne like the nominees, just a discreet glass of water. For someone who once walked royal carpets and basked in flashing cameras, being sidelined in such a way wasn't just rejection, it was an intentional, calculated diminishment of her presence, and Meghan knew it.
And that haven't proven that they are creative, or that they're hard workers. Additionally, when I talked to a publicist a few weeks ago,
The humiliation went beyond boos and whispers. Meghan was stripped of every privilege that defined the night. While nominees toasted to their achievements with champagne, Meghan sat near the exit, visibly excluded. The photographers ignored her, the organizers made no acknowledgement, and her very presence became an inconvenience. To Hollywood, she wasn't a star or even a notable guest. She was a problem. For Meghan, used to commanding attention with curated appearances and tightly controlled interviews, this was devastating. She had no platform, no allies in the room, and no control over how she was being perceived. Worse, the rejection wasn't loud anymore. It was silent, calculated, and deadly effective. In a town built on appearances, being ignored can sting more than being mocked. Meghan didn't just face rejection, she faced irrelevance. And in Hollywood, irrelevance is the one fate worse than failure.
And actually, when we look at them, their quasi-royal tours that they've taken part in, what do...
The morning after, Meghan's humiliation was complete. While nominees and attendees filled headlines and photo galleries, Meghan was nowhere to be found. Getty, Shutterstock, and other agencies had carefully cropped her out of photos or shelved them entirely. Even moments where she was visibly in the room were erased from public view. Insiders revealed that her team tried to push their own strategically lit photos to the press, but agencies declined to run them. Nobody wanted to endorse Meghan by making it look like she belonged. One publicist explained. For someone who built her career on optics and media control, this was the cruelest punishment. Hollywood hadn't just booed her, they erased her from history as though she was never there. For Meghan, invisibility wasn't just rejection, it was the ultimate humiliation, and it showed the world just how far her star had fallen.
Invited, she often turns up anyway, and she's just there and stays there. But this time, she obviously...
In the days following the Emmy debacle, insiders labeled Meghan's stunt as one of her worst PR disasters since leaving the royal family. Instead of a triumphant comeback, she left with whispers of desperation trailing behind her. Hollywood had spoken loud and clear. Meghan wasn't wanted. The failed Spotify deal, the floundering podcast rebrand, and the confusing lifestyle project had already cast doubts on her credibility. But the Emmy humiliation cemented it. In an industry where reputation is everything, Meghan's presence had become a liability. Major stars avoided her, agencies refused her photos, and producers mocked her attempt to crash the party. For Meghan, who once believed she could outmaneuver bad press with careful optics, this was a turning point. Her star power hadn't just dimmed, it had burned out. And now, she faces the one reality she has always feared: total irrelevance in the industry she longs to control. Meghan Markle's Emmy humiliation wasn't just about one night, it was about a career unraveling in real time. She thought she could walk into Hollywood's biggest celebration and remind the world of her power. But instead, she reminded everyone of her desperation. From the boos to the cold shoulders, from the sidelining to the media erasure, Hollywood delivered a brutal message. Meghan Markle no longer matters here. For a woman who built her post-royal identity on visibility and influence, being erased was the ultimate punishment. And perhaps the cruelest part of all is that Meghan orchestrated the entire stunt herself, believing she could force her way back into relevance. Instead, she left with the harshest headline possible. Meghan Markle wasn't just rejected, she was humiliated. In Hollywood, appearances are everything. And for Meghan, this appearance may have been her last real chance.